Welcome to the Militia Gaming Community. I'm Trigger, and this video is all about the McLaren P1. Let's go! Alright guys, if you haven't seen any of my wrong build series before, this is where I test the engines, every single engine for the car, and then I come up with the best track, drag, drift, and off-road builds for each car. So for this particular car, the P1, I don't know what I'm expecting for the off-road and the drift builds. I think it should be pretty good for drag and track, but we will see. I did go through and test all of the engines last night, so we do have sort of a recommendation for the engines, and the reason I say sort of is because there are two engines that compete very, very closely with each other, and I think the build for this car really is going to depend on what type of track you're going to take it on. I've tested this on Arian and Sonic, and it looks to me like one engine is much better for Arian, which is a shorter, tighter course with a lot more of the hairpin style turns, and Sonic is a much more wide open track that has a lot more top speed sections and straightaways. So I'm going to show you the build that I think will be best overall, but I would say be flexible with this car. There really are two different builds that would work, and one I think will work for the majority of the tracks, and the other will work for the other part of the tracks that are a little bit more open and straight. So let's get into it. Alright, so the build's going to start with the engine. And the engine that I'm going to recommend for the majority of your builds, for the majority of the tracks, is the 903 horsepower 3.8 liter V8 hybrid. This is the stock engine in the car. And it's kind of strange that the stock engine works really, really well. It doesn't happen very often, but in this case it does. This is the best engine for shorter, turnier, more drifty style tracks. Tracks that are not going to be wide open and straight. Now, that being said, it's not that bad wide open and straight either. Like, you could definitely use this engine for all of the tracks and you would be fine. But the other hybrid engine, the 986 3.8 V8 hybrid, which is the most expensive engine that you can get for the car, actually performs a little bit better on the top end. So I actually like this one for tracks like Sonic or J-Storm, or those, you know, the 4-cross tracks that are in the middle of that freeway intersection. So anyways, let's take a look at my build. The parts for each of these engines is going to be very, very similar. I am going to change the gearbox for these two builds. So let's start with my first build, which is the general one, the one that you can use for everything. So anyway, it's the 903 horsepower 3.8 liter V8 hybrid, Ultimate Plus engine parts, and the Ultimate Dual Turbo, the 5x3 pound NOS as always. Now on the chassis, we're going to go track suspension, Elite brakes, and Elite race tires. After that, we've got the Elite Plus clutch and the 6-speed gearbox. Now hear me out on this. I did a lot of testing on the gearboxes, and here's what I'll say. The 7-speed is a good gearbox. However, first, second, and third, you're going to be banging your rev limiter. It is insane how much wheel spin you get with the 7-speed transmission at the start of races and through the corners. The 6-speed gearbox works better for shorter, turnier courses like Arian, but it's not so great for courses like Sonic. So I'm going to use the 6-speed because most of the courses in this game, most of the tracks are like Arian as opposed to like Sonic. There's not that many straight highway style tracks. So 6-speed transmission on this one, guys. I promise it's a much better transmission for the type of racing that you're going to do on the track in this game. So 6-speed gearbox, and then the super track differential. That gives us a 2.330 to 60, which is really kind of slow for this game. I know in real life that would be like, you know, but that's not how it is in this game. We need it under 2. We need it under 2. 930 max torque, 226 top speed, and that's because of the gearbox. So if you change the gearbox, top speed goes up. But we don't need 226 on most of the courses in this game. Okay, 1232 max horsepower, but we're using the dual turbo, so it's giving us 1200. You can swap to the single and it'll give you 1232, and it'll give you that sweet that noise. I'm terrible at that, but that's what it would give you if you switch to the single ultimate. Anyway, auxiliaries are up to you. I use repair kits and NOS duration. Unless I'm racing with other people, then I'll swap to NOS refills, and then I'll forget to refill them every single race. Alright, so as far as the other build, the one that you're going to be using on the open courses, you're actually going to be using the 986 3.8 liter V8 hybrid. This is the most expensive engine that you can buy for the car. The parts that you're going to be using are exactly the same except the gearbox. So you use that expensive engine and the 7-speed gearbox. This is a much better setup for longer, straighter courses. Doesn't work too well for courses that are tight though, so keep that in mind. But that's it, that's the only difference. I would still recommend the same live tuning, and I would still recommend the same brake to drift. The handling of this car is a little bit unique. Alright, let's take it out of the garage and show you the live tuning. Alright, for the live tuning for this particular car, it's a lot different than every other car that I've tested. I generally like a high downforce and a low steering sensitivity. Low steering means greater precision. High steering means it's more responsive. High downforce means more traction and less slippage. Low downforce usually means more slippage and less traction. So I don't really like that I have to do this to this car, but it is a very sticky car. So low downforce, high steering sensitivity. In addition to that, I had to move the drift style to brake. That actually helps it slide even more when you hit the left trigger to brake around a turn. It'll actually help it slide just a little bit more. And even then, on some of the tight turns, I will need to handbrake to make this thing turn. So it is very, very sticky, and that's sort of okay, I guess, but it's not great for Need for Speed Heat. It's good in real life, but not for Heat. So, that being said, our quarter mile is 9.07 in a track build. And this is it, man. This is the track build. So let's go ahead and head back to the garage, which we're already there. Let's go back in the garage and let's turn this thing into a drag car. Alright, let's turn this thing into a drag car. So first off, I want to swap the NOS over to a 1x15. First step, add more NOS. Next, we want to leave the track suspension alone, and we want to change the tires to a drag tire. This will give us the most traction we can possibly have off the line. The gearbox we're going to have to test and see which one performs the best in terms of traction and acceleration. We've got 3 options, 5, 6, and 7. Let's make sure we have one of each. We do. Differential is going to be the same, and everything else is going to be the same. So it's really just the NOS, the tires, and the gearbox. That's what we're looking at to make this a drag car. Let's take it out of the garage. Alright, so what gearbox do we have in here now? We've got the 6. Let's swap to the 5, and we'll start at 5 and then go 6 and then go 7. So with the 5-speed gearbox, we're at an 8.9 quarter mile. And we're going to leave these settings exactly like this because this is how I would set up a drag car. With the exception of steering sensitivity, it doesn't need to be this high for drag racing, but you know, it is what it is. In fact, let's go ahead and recommend you lower it down so you've got a more precise steering going in a straight line. As far as traction control, always off, and brake like this. Downforce is always going to be minimum when it comes to drag racing. You want the lightest possible amount of force on the car so it can go faster. Alright, here's the issue with the 5-speed. It does show an 8.90 quarter mile. However, the top speed is only 187 miles per hour. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. Most people drag race on the street right here behind the garage, and 187 miles per hour is not fast enough in the top speed to win against anything. Literally every car in the game would beat this car in a drag race with this 5-speed transmission. So 5 speed's out, but let's swap to the 6 and see what happens. With the 6-speed, you're looking at 226. Now this gets a little interesting because depending on the length of the drag race, if you guys are drag racing on a highway and you're going to be going forever, this is not a great option for you. This 6-speed is not going to work because it's not going to give you the top speed that every other car in the game can get to, which is 230. So you will top out at 226 and you'll watch your friend whiz by you at 233 and there's nothing you can do about it. So for that reason, I kind of want to get rid of the 6-speed too, but it is an 8.93 quarter mile. So here's the thing, if you were really doing a quarter mile, the 5-speed would be faster. But who knows what a quarter mile is in this game? There is no drag racing in this game. Why are we doing drag builds? I don't know. Everything is crazy. Alright, so let's swap to the 7-speed and let's see what that looks like. 233 miles an hour top speed, 8.97 in terms of the quarter mile. So here's what's interesting about this. If we put the 7-speed, which is the best for top speed, it's the best for drag racing on freeways, and if you're going to be going for a long distance, this one is going to work the best. The problem is it's the slowest gearbox that is available for this car. The 5-speed is actually a better quarter mile gearbox, which is super weird. So now I don't even know what to recommend. But here's the thing. Nobody races a straight quarter mile in this game. It just doesn't happen. You don't see it. Everybody just gets on the gas and goes forever. So I'm not going to recommend the 5-speed, even though it's the quickest gearbox for this car. I'm going to recommend the 6-speed for drag racing, and I'll tell you why. The 6-speed is going to get you down this drag strip right here. I don't think we will top out on the top speed with the 6-speed gearbox before we hit that street that crosses this one, which is generally where people stop on this particular drag race. So let's throw the 6-speed in and let's see if I'm right. Here we go. Are we gonna top out? Nope. 224. Remember, the top speed was 226. We did not top out before we got to this street. So, if you're drag racing your friends and they've got this exact same car and they've got the 7-speed gearbox, you know you're gonna beat them with that 6-speed. As long as your launch is good and as long as you have, a full 15-pound tank of NOS. Alright, so here's the full drag build for this car. You've got the 903 horsepower 3.8 liter V8 engine with all Ultimate Plus engine parts. You got the Ultimate Dual Turbo and the 1x15 pound NOS with the track suspension, elite brakes, and elite drag tires. Now, as far as the drivetrain is concerned, Elite Plus clutch, Super Plus 6-speed gearbox. Remember, we're testing this drag just on the street outside the house, and the Super Track differential. And then as far as the auxiliaries go, you can use whatever you want. I like NOS duration. Alright, moving on, let's drift this thing. Alright, so to turn this car into a drift car, we need to keep in mind whether it's an all-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive car. In this case, the P1 is actually a rear-wheel drive car and a rear mid-engine car. So most of the weight is in the rear of the car. It's kind of in the middle, but it's more towards the rear of the car. And that being said, we need to maybe do a couple of little special things to make the rear end slide out a little bit easier. But let's try the rear wheel drive setup and see how it goes. So if you want to do a rear wheel drive setup for a drift car and you're using an automatic transmission, you're not shifting manually, then I would go speed cross suspension, drag tires, and then the Pro Drift differential. Now the rest of the parts are not super important, but the gearbox will help with shifts and the engine will help with power. So, obviously build it like you would build a track car and then swap the suspension, the tires, and the differential to get your drift build. Let's take this out and let's just see how well it does with this particular build. This is the standard rear wheel drive build that I use. Alright, here we go. First test. It's slidey, but it's not my favorite. It doesn't transition very well. And I'm flying through this course. I'm not really drifting. Yeah, 19,000 on that. I was kind of flying through it. I also hit a couple of traffic cars. Let's try this again. Oh, you know what we forgot? Let's make sure our live tuning is correct. So we want that max steering sensitivity and downforce all the way down with the drift style on gas. Let's try this again. Alright, that feels a little bit better. Yeah, I think the live tuning was off. Once you get it sliding, you can definitely keep it sliding, which is nice. Not my most cleanest drift, but not a lot of points on that. Let's see if we can do a little bit better. 36,000. So again, that's okay, but it's really not great. I think it's because the drift angle, you just can't get that drift angle wide enough to get a lot of points. So we might need to switch to a full speed cross setup just to get a little bit of a wider angle. Let's just see what a speed cross tire does to this build. It definitely makes it more responsive, but it feels harder to maintain the slides. The drag car definitely wants to maintain a slide. The speed cross tire does not. Much more responsive on the speed cross though, but nowhere near where it needs to be. I think the drag tire is a much better option for this particular car, but before we go back, let's try the speed cross differential just to marry all of those parts up and see what happens. Yeah, it just doesn't want to stay sliding. It's not a great option for drifting. I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I don't like this speed cross either. I like the original setup the best. The only other option we could go to is try the all-wheel drive setup and just see if that works. It's not something I recommend for rear-wheel drive cars, but it'd be something we could try. See, with the drag tires, you can keep the rear end loose, but it still wants to pull. You know, this car is extremely sticky. It's not going to be a high-scoring car at all. But see, I can at least keep this drift going. Yeah, not a high-scoring car at all. It takes a lot of effort to make this thing work. So let's try one last thing, and then we'll call it a day on the drift. Alright, that was it. That was the ticket right there. That was the one. So, here's the weirdest drift setup I've ever offered anyone. So you've got the 3.8 liter V8 hybrid. You can use either the stock engine or the really expensive one. And you've got Ultimate Plus engine parts with an Ultimate Dual Turbo and the 1x15 pound NOS. Now, for the drift part, Showcase suspension, super. Elite drift tires. And the Speed Cross differential. This is super weird. Super weird. I don't think I've ever recommended this setup for a drift car ever, but this one feels the best and it allowed me to score the highest. That being said, this is a terrible drift car. This car does not drift at all. It's not a good drift car. This is like supposed to be like a track monster in the real world. It's definitely not a drift monster, that's for sure. Anyway, for the rest of the build, you've got the Elite brakes, Elite Plus clutch, the 6-speed gearbox, and that's it. So this is it. This is the drift build. Let's get out of this because it's terrible. Let's go take this thing off-road. Actually, one more thing before we take it off-road. The live tuning for the drift setup, steering sensitivity maxed, downforce all the way down, drift style gas. Alright, so knowing that this engine is just a tiny bit limited on top speed when you use the 6-speed gearbox, we're actually going to swap this over to the 7 for for this rally build, for this off-road build. So before we do that though, let's swap to the rally suspension. Let's get them off-road tires. Those are on-road. Get it together. And then let's swap this gearbox to 7. And let's go ahead and swap the differential to a rally as well. Rally. Here we go. Alright, so our rally build puts the car at 393. There's not that many cars that are over 400 for rally. There's a few, but I think this is pretty normal. Let's take this out to HTV2 and Rumble and see what kind of times we can get. Alright, here we go. First test on HTV2. Oh, it's a slow start. Let's get going. Oh, slow start. Let's see if we can get to these guys. Yeah, there we go. Man, it just spins wheels. No traction for this. Slides around the corner nice. Alright, I'm not happy with the top speed on the dirt. It's fairly slow. It does okay when it gets to the streets, but as far as the dirt goes, it kind of lags. Alright, here we go. Final time. Oh my god, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Why is there going to be a line of cars right there at the end? We're starting over. But first we're going to see what that time was. 1:57.16. Starting over. No talk in this race. All concentration. Alright, that was a little better. Much more clean. Much more clean. 1:56.14. 1:56.14. Not that fast. It's kind of middle of the pack-ish. But let's go ahead and take it over to Rumble and see what we got. Here we go, Rumble test. It's so slow off the line. Look at how, oh my god, look how slow it is. I'm having a fight with the traffic. Why is this car so slow? Get out of here, Subaru. It's just so slow off the line, it gets no traction at all. That first lap didn't feel very fast. I think we're in for a pretty long time here. Man, this car loves to clip on the ground. Alright, final lap. I'm not too excited about this. This feels so slow. We're barely lapping 6th place on this turn here. We should be up there lapping 2nd place on this turn right here. But look how far out we are. 4th place is over here competing. And this front end will not stay down. Here we go for one of the slowest times ever in Rumble. 3:25.75. Jesus. And I really didn't race it bad either. Alright, let's take a look at the off-road build real quick before we show you the summary and the rankings for each of the categories for this car. Alright, we got the 3.8 liter V8 hybrid, the stock engine, I remind you. The Ultimate Plus engine parts with an Ultimate dual turbo and 5x3 pound NOS, pretty standard. Chassis, we're looking at rally suspension, elite brakes, and elite off-road tires. Elite Plus clutch, elite 7-speed gearbox, and the rally differential. Auxiliaries, you can use what you want. I like repair kits and nitrous duration. I like my car looking good when I enter a race. Alright, let's wrap this thing up. Alright guys, let's just summarize this car a little bit and show you the rankings for each of the categories. So for this car on the track, it just really isn't that great. It kind of falls in the middle of the pack of the cars that I've tested, kind of towards the bottom. It does run a time under 3 minutes on Arian, but it takes a lot of skill to do that. It's just not that fast. It's a little bit disappointing in that category. As far as drag is concerned, this should be a drag monster. It's a hybrid engine. It has an electric motor. It has a V8 engine in it as well. It should have all the traction in the world, and it should be extremely fast as a drag car, but it's just not. It's actually towards the bottom of the pack for the drag racing as well. So it's just not great in either of those categories. Now we go into drift, and it's horrendous. It is literally maybe the worst drift car I've ever tested. I don't know. I mean, it does drift. You can drift with it, but it's just not a great score. It really is not. I would not recommend it at all for drifting. There are so many other better cars. And then lastly, for off-road, I mean, I just really didn't have a lot of fun playing in off-road. I had to concentrate 100% so that I was avoiding all of the clipping spots because it liked to rub on the ground. The front end would pop up on every single clipping spot. I just, I don't know, it wasn't that fun to drive, and it had a horrendous time. I mean, it was like one step above the ZR1 Corvette, which is also a horrible off-road car as well. So I'm finding it hard to find a good place to use this car in the game. I mean, it's a beautiful car. It's a super car. It's supposed to be amazing in real life, but it just sucks in this game. I mean, it just really isn't good in this game. So I don't know, man. I really don't like the car at all in the game. I would never use it for anything other than just being a showcase car. It looks really nice, and it might look good in the garage. Alright guys, that's it for this one. If you have any questions about this video or any video, you're welcome to send me a DM on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is right here on the screen now, so you can send me a DM at any time. They're always open, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Alright, shout out to all of the Militia subs. Thank you so much for watching another build video. I will catch you on the next one. Trigger out.